The terminal smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, that tired, recycled air that clung to late-night flights. The departure board flickered above, casting pale blue light over travelers who looked half asleep and half defeated. She stood in line with her boarding pass folded neatly between her fingers, shoulders relaxed, posture steady, the kind of calm that came from long practice. Nothing about her movements drew attention. That, too, was intentional. When her boarding group was called, she stepped forward with the others. The gate agent scanned passes quickly, barely looking at faces, until it was her turn. The scanner beeped. The agent frowned at the screen, then glanced up at her. The pause was brief, but not brief enough to be meaningless. "Just one moment," the agent said. She waited. People behind her shifted, annoyed. Someone checked their watch. The agent typed something, then picked up a phone, murmured into it, nodded, and finally looked back at her. "I'm sorry," the agent said, voice carefully neutral. "There's been a change. Your seat is no longer available." She didn't react right away. Not because she was confused, but because she was listening. Tone mattered. Word choice mattered. Everything mattered. "My seat?" she asked evenly. "I'm in first class." "Yes," the agent replied, already reaching for a stack of seat slips. "You'll need to take another seat in economy. We'll address it after the flight." A ripple of irritation passed through the line. Someone scoffed. Someone else muttered, "Figures." She looked down at her boarding pass again, then back up. "What kind of change removes a paid seat without notice?" The agent's smile tightened. "Operational needs." "What operational needs?" she asked. The agent hesitated. "I don't have the details. Please step aside so we can keep boarding." The words were polite. The dismissal was not. She stepped to the side, not because she had been ordered to, but because she chose to. The jet bridge echoed with footsteps as passengers filed past her. Some avoided eye contact. A few glanced at her boarding pass still visible in her hand, then looked quickly away. She noticed everything. The way the agent's shoulders relaxed once she moved aside. The way the next passenger was greeted with an easy smile. The way the word, "sir," came out warm, welcoming. A man in a crisp blazer handed over his pass. The scanner beeped. No pause this time. "Welcome aboard," the agent said brightly. "Enjoy first class." She watched as he walked down the jet bridge, unaware that he was heading toward the seat that had just been taken from her. She didn't sigh. She didn't roll her eyes. She didn't pull out her phone to complain or film or call anyone. Instead, she adjusted the strap of her bag and waited. Inside the aircraft, the cabin glowed softly, warm lights reflecting off polished surfaces. A flight attendant stood near the door, greeting passengers. When she reached her, the attendant glanced at the boarding pass, then at her face, then back again. "There seems to be an issue," the attendant said. "So I've been told," she replied. The attendant leaned closer, lowering her voice. "If you'll just take a seat in the back for now, we'll sort it out once we're airborne." "For now," she repeated. "Yes." She nodded once and walked down the aisle, past the wide first-class seats, past the one marked with her number. She saw the man settling into it, stretching his legs, placing his bag overhead without a second thought. In economy, she slid into the middle seat she'd been given. The man at the window barely glanced at her. The woman at the aisle gave her a sympathetic look but said nothing. The safety announcements began. Overhead bins slammed shut. The plane hummed with movement. Yet something in the air felt off, like a held breath. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook. No logos. No markings. She flipped to a clean page and wrote the time. Then the seat number she had been assigned. Then the exact phrase. "Operational needs." The man beside her leaned over slightly. "They really took your seat?" She met his eyes. "Yes." "That's messed up," he said quietly. She gave a small, polite smile. "Thank you." As boarding continued, she watched the crew. Who spoke to whom? Who avoided her gaze? Who glanced back once, then twice? A senior flight attendant approached, posture rigid with authority. "Ma'am," he said, "we understand you're upset." "I haven't said I'm upset," she replied. He blinked, thrown off. "Right. Well, sometimes these things happen." "Do they?" she asked. He gestured vaguely toward the front of the plane. "Weight distribution. Crew needs. Upgrades. Downgrades," she corrected softly. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. "We'll compensate you." "How?" she asked. "We can discuss it later." Later. Always later. The plane door closed. The engines grew louder. The cabin crew strapped in. The captain's voice crackled over the speakers, welcoming everyone aboard, thanking them for choosing the airline, promising a smooth flight. She added another line to her notebook. The plane began to taxi. The woman in the aisle seat leaned over. "I hope they fix this," she whispered. "So do I," she replied. As the plane lifted off, the city lights fell away beneath them. The cabin settled into that strange, suspended quiet that came with altitude. Drinks were served. Laptops opened. Movies flickered to life on seatback screens. Up front, laughter drifted back from first class. She closed her notebook and rested her hands in her lap, eyes forward, expression unreadable. She had been in rooms far more hostile than this. She had sat across from people who smiled while lying, who underestimated her by design. This was familiar territory. A few minutes later, the senior attendant returned, this time with a supervisor. His badge gleamed under the cabin lights. He smiled like someone who believed the situation was already under control. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm told there was some confusion at boarding." "Was there?" she asked. "Yes," he said smoothly. "But we appreciate your cooperation." Her gaze held his. "I haven't cooperated yet." His smile faltered, just slightly. "We'd like to avoid any delays," he said. "If you'll just remain in your current seat." "Then say that," she interrupted gently. "Say you chose to remove me from first class and you expect me to accept it quietly." A hush fell over the nearby rows. A few heads turned. The supervisor cleared his throat. "There's no need to escalate." "I agree," she said. "Which is why I'm asking for clarity." He shifted his weight. "I assure you, this will be handled appropriately." She reached for her notebook again, not breaking eye contact as she wrote another note. "Are you documenting this?" he asked. "Yes." "Why?" She looked up, her voice calm, measured. "Because patterns matter." He laughed nervously. "This isn't what you think." She closed the notebook slowly. "Then you should have no problem explaining it." The supervisor opened his mouth to respond, then stopped as a call light chimed somewhere up front. He glanced toward first class, then back at her. "We'll continue this shortly," he said. She nodded. "I'll be right here." As he walked away, murmurs spread through the cabin. People whispered. People wondered. Some sensed that this wasn't just about a seat. She sat back, eyes steady, pulse calm. The first move had been made. And the game, she knew, was only just beginning. The aisle felt narrower now, or maybe the air itself had thickened. Conversations lowered as if the cabin had collectively agreed that something important was unfolding and no one wanted to be the one caught speaking over it. She could feel eyes on her without looking, the weight of curiosity pressing in from every direction. The drink cart rolled past. The attendant stopped beside her row, smiled professional but strained. "Would you like something to drink?" "Water is fine," she said. The attendant handed her a small plastic cup, fingers brushing hers for just a second too long. There was something unspoken in that touch, hesitation, maybe sympathy, maybe caution. The attendant glanced toward the front before moving on. A few rows up, laughter erupted again from first class. It wasn't loud, but it carried. The kind of carefree sound that only came when someone believed they were exactly where they belong. She took a slow sip of water, eyes forward, and let the sound wash over her without reaction. Emotional restraint was not weakness. It was discipline. Minutes passed. The seatbelt sign chimed off. People stood, stretching legs, opening overhead bins. Still, no one came back to her. No explanation. No update. The man at the window leaned closer. They just going to ignore this? She didn't look at him. Ignoring is a choice, she said. So is correcting. He nodded, unsure what else to say. A woman across the aisle finally spoke up. Excuse me. She called softly toward a passing attendant. She had a first-class ticket, right? The attendant froze for half a second before replying. Everything is being handled, ma'am. Because it doesn't look like it, the woman said. A murmur followed. Agreement. Discomfort. The attendant's smile hardened. I'll notify my supervisor, she said, already moving away. When the supervisor returned, he didn't come alone. Another crew member followed, arms crossed, jaw tight. The supervisor crouched slightly so they were eye level, as if proximity could manufacture intimacy. We understand you're unhappy, he began. I'm observant, she replied. There's a difference. He inhaled sharply. We don't appreciate accusations. I haven't made one, she said. I've asked questions. He glanced around, aware of the attention. Let's not make this a bigger issue than it needs to be. She finally turned her head, meeting his gaze fully. It became a bigger issue the moment my seat was reassigned without cause. There was cause, he said. Then state it. He hesitated. Another passenger required accommodation. Required, she repeated. Or requested? His jaw tightened. I'm not obligated to share private details. You are obligated, she said calmly, to apply policy consistently. The crew member behind him scoffed under his breath. It was quiet, but not quiet enough. She wrote it down. The supervisor noticed. You keep writing, he said. What exactly do you think you're doing? Preserving accuracy, she replied. For what? He pressed. She paused, then answered honestly. So this doesn't get rewritten later. The silence that followed was sharp. Somewhere behind them, a baby cried. Somewhere ahead, a glass clinked. The supervisor straightened. We're offering you compensation. Miles. A voucher. You're offering me silence, she said. I'm declining. His voice dropped. If you continue to disrupt the flight, we may have to involve security upon landing. That did it. A ripple of sound moved through the cabin, not loud, but unmistakable. People shifted. A man 2 rows back shook his head slowly. The woman across the aisle crossed her arms. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten. She simply asked, Can you explain how sitting in my assigned seat would have disrupted anything? He opened his mouth, then closed it. The crew member behind him cut in. Look, you don't look like... He stopped himself too late. Like what? She asked. His face flushed. Like someone who usually flies first class. The words landed heavy, undeniable, hanging in the air like smoke. A collective inhale moved through the cabin. She looked at him steadily. Say that again, she said softly. I didn't mean... No, she interrupted. You meant exactly what you said. The supervisor turned on his colleague. That's enough. But it wasn't. Not anymore. She wrote again. Slowly. Deliberately. Every letter clean. The supervisor swallowed. We're going to resolve this, he said, but the confidence was gone now. Please give us time. You've had time, she replied. You used it. He stood abruptly, nodding to the crew member. We'll be back. As they walked away, the cabin buzzed, not with noise but with awareness. People leaned toward each other, whispering. Someone a few rows up pulled out their phone, then hesitated, lowering it again. The man at the window exhaled. Wow. She closed her notebook, resting it atop her bag. Words reveal more than people think, she said. Minutes later, the captain's voice returned over the speakers, this time less polished. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Our crew is addressing a seating matter. We appreciate your understanding. Understanding. Another word that asked more than it gave. A flight attendant approached quietly, kneeling beside her seat. I just want to say. I'm sorry, she whispered. This isn't right. She met the attendant's eyes, gentle but firm. I know. The attendant hesitated. They're nervous. Good, she said. From the front movement. The supervisor returned again, this time with a tablet in hand, scrolling furiously. We can move you back now, he said quickly. There's been a reconsideration. She didn't stand. What changed? He blinked. We realized a mistake was made. A mistake, she echoed. Or a decision? He looked around, then lowered his voice. Please, he said. Let's just fix this. She leaned back slightly. Before I move anywhere, she said, I need confirmation of something. He nodded. Anything. Was my seat reassigned before or after you saw my face? His lips parted, then pressed together. The answer was enough. She stood then, slowly, not rushing, not triumphant. The aisle parted as she stepped forward. Passengers watched her pass, some with admiration, some with guilt, some with something like relief. When she reached first class, she stopped. The man in her seat looked up, confused, then embarrassed as an attendant gestured for him to move. She waited, hands clasped, calm as ever. But before sitting, she turned back toward the supervisor. I want it noted, she said clearly, that this correction did not come from fairness. It came from fear of exposure. The supervisor nodded stiffly. Noted. She sat, finally, the leather cool beneath her, the space wide and quiet. But the satisfaction wasn't in the seat. It was in the shift. Around her, the cabin exhaled. People returned to their screens, their conversations, their meals, but something had changed. An unspoken lesson had passed through the rows. She opened her notebook one last time and wrote a single line. Escalation confirmed. And somewhere deep in the airline's carefully managed systems, a reckoning had begun to stir. The quiet in first class felt heavier than the hum of the engines. It wasn't peaceful silence. It was the kind that followed a near miss, when everyone sensed the danger had passed but couldn't stop replaying how close it came. She settled into the seat without ceremony, fastening the belt, folding her hands, gaze forward. The wide space around her didn't soften her posture. If anything, it sharpened it. The supervisor hovered a moment too long, as if waiting for gratitude that never came. He nodded stiffly and retreated. The attendant offered a drink, voice softer now, almost deferential. She accepted water again. Consistency mattered. Across the aisle, a woman leaned over, whispering, I'm glad you stood your ground. The woman's smile was small, appreciative, but brief. This wasn't about comfort. It was about accuracy. She took out the notebook again. Not to write immediately, first to see who noticed. The supervisor noticed. 2 attendants noticed. The man who'd been moved from the seat noticed, eyes darting toward her, then away. Good. Awareness had shifted. That was the hinge. The tablet chimed somewhere up front. A hushed exchange followed. She caught fragments. Policy, documentation, don't escalate. The word, escalate, came twice. She wrote it down. 10 minutes passed. Then another. The cart returned with warm towels and menus. The attendant placed one gently in her hand, fingers trembling slightly. If there's anything you need, she said. I need clarity, she replied kindly. The attendant nodded and moved on. The supervisor returned, this time alone, posture less rigid, voice lower. We want to make sure you're comfortable. Comfort is optional, she said. Transparency isn't. He tried a different approach. You mentioned documentation. Are you a journalist? No. An attorney? No. He hesitated. A frequent flyer with status? She met his eyes. You've already answered your own question. He frowned. I don't understand. That, she said, tapping the notebook, is the problem. he sighed. Look, mistakes happen. We corrected it. You corrected the outcome, she replied. Not the cause. The engines thrummed steadily, the night stretching endless beyond the windows. He glanced at the curtains separating the cabins, then back at her. What do you want? The question was honest now, stripped of pretense. I want you to say, on record, why the seat was reassigned, she said. And why it was reassigned to the person it was. He swallowed. We can't discuss internal decisions. Then we're done talking, she said, turning her gaze forward. A pause. Then he leaned closer. If there's a formal complaint, we'll cooperate. There already is, she replied. His eyes widened. Filed by whom? She didn't answer. He stepped back, confusion etched across his face. He walked away, then stopped, turned, and walked back again. Are you threatening the airline? No, she said calmly. I'm observing it. From behind the curtain, voices rose, tight, hurried. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else said, Check the log. The word log snagged her attention. She wrote it down. The captain's voice came over the speakers again, measured but tense. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your patience as we address an internal matter. Internal. The word tasted like insulation. She closed her notebook and slipped it into her bag. Now came the reveal, but timing was everything. Too soon and it looked reactive. Too late and it looked theatrical. The reveal had to feel inevitable. The supervisor returned with another figure, older, with silver at the temples and a practiced calm that came from managing crises, not preventing them. He introduced himself with a title and a name she didn't repeat. He extended a hand. She did not take it. We'd like to apologize, he said. We take situations like this very seriously. I know, she replied. That's why I'm here. His smile froze. You're here, how? She reached into her bag and removed the badge case again, opening it fully this time. The seal caught the light. The insignia was unmistakable. I'm conducting a compliance audit, she said evenly. Undercover. Randomized. Tonight's flight was selected 2 weeks ago. The silence was immediate and absolute. It didn't ripple this time. It slammed. The older man's face drained of color. The supervisor's mouth opened, then closed. He glanced around, as if hoping the cabin hadn't heard. It had. You can close the curtain, she added. It won't help. The older man cleared his throat. We weren't informed. You weren't meant to be, she said. Authenticity requires absence of preparation. He nodded slowly. Of course. She continued, voice calm, unyielding. The reassignment of my seat occurred before any operational issue was identified. The justification shifted twice. A crew member made a statement about my appearance and class expectations. A supervisor implied non-cooperation would result in security involvement. All of it has been documented. The supervisor looked like he might be sick. I also observed differential treatment, she went on, between passengers holding equivalent tickets. The pattern aligns with prior complaints. Complaints? The older man asked too quickly. Yes, she said. Plural. He exhaled. We'd like to move this conversation to the ground. You will, she replied. With regulators present. A woman in the aisle seat across from her whispered, Oh my God! Someone else covered their mouth. A man nodded once, slow and deliberate. The older man regained a measure of composure. We'll fully cooperate. You will preserve all records, she said. Gate logs, seat reassignment timestamps, internal messages, and crew communications. Any deletion will be noted as obstruction. He nodded again, stiff. Understood. She leaned back slightly. Good. The curtain twitched as an attendant peeked through, eyes wide. The older man gestured for her to leave. She did quickly. The cabin exhaled, but the air stayed charged. Whispers swelled, then softened. People looked at her differently now, not with pity or curiosity, but with respect edged by awe. She didn't acknowledge it. The supervisor lingered, voice barely audible. "I didn't know. That," she said, "is rarely an excuse." He nodded, chastened. The remainder of the flight passed in a strange calm. Service continued with exaggerated politeness. Smiles were careful. Movements precise. Every interaction felt rehearsed, as if the entire crew had become suddenly aware of invisible cameras. She made no further notes. There was nothing left to capture. The record was complete. As the plane began its descent, the city lights rose to meet them. The captain announced arrival details, thanked everyone again for their patience. The word patience landed differently now. The older man returned one last time. "When we land," he said, "our legal team will receive instructions," she finished. "Yes." He hesitated. "May I ask why you didn't say anything sooner?" She considered him for a moment. "Because how people behave when they think no one important is watching," she said, "is the most accurate data there is." The wheels touched down. Applause broke out, not celebratory, but relieved. The cabin slowed, taxied, stopped. As the seatbelt sign chimed, she remained seated, hands folded, eyes forward. This wasn't the end. It was the hinge before it. Around her, people gathered their things, glancing back at her as they passed, some offering quiet words of support, some simply nodding. She acknowledged them with a look, a small smile, nothing more. The jet bridge felt colder than the cabin, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as she stepped forward with the same unhurried pace she'd kept all night. The terminal stretched ahead, polished floors reflecting tired faces and rolling luggage. But the energy had shifted. People weren't rushing past her now. They were watching, aware that something consequential had crossed the threshold before any of them reached baggage claim. Two uniformed representatives stood near the gate desk, posture stiff, eyes alert. They didn't speak to her at first. They didn't need to. The older executive had already murmured into a phone, voice low and urgent, using words like immediate and preservation. He glanced at her, nodded once, then stepped aside. She paused just beyond the aircraft door and looked back into the cabin. The curtain was still drawn, but the illusion it once created was gone. Inside, the rules had been tested. Outside, they would be enforced. As passengers filtered past, reactions varied. Some offered quiet thanks. Some offered apologies for not speaking sooner. Others simply met her eyes and nodded, as if acknowledging a truth they'd always known but rarely seen proven. She accepted each response with the same grace she'd shown all night. Validation wasn't the goal. Accountability was. At the gate desk, a manager approached with a clipboard held too tightly. "We're prepared to offer compensation," she began, words practiced and automatic. She stopped walking. "That's not appropriate," she said. The manager blinked. "Excuse me? Compensation implies inconvenience," she replied. This was harm. A silence fell around them. The manager swallowed and nodded, scribbling something she would later wish she'd never written. Airport security arrived, not for her, but for process. Doors were closed. Screens dimmed. A quiet room near the gate was prepared, glass walls turning opaque at the touch of a button. Inside, the hum of the terminal faded, replaced by the faint whir of ventilation and the weight of consequence. She took a seat at the table, placing her bag neatly at her feet. Across from her sat a rotating cast of officials, operations, legal, compliance, each one more careful than the last. Apologies were offered. Statements were made. Promises stacked atop promises. She listened. Then she spoke. "The corrective action," she said calmly, "will be measured by behavior, not language. Policies mean nothing if discretion is biased. Training means nothing if power is protected." They nodded. Too quickly. She noted it. "Your data," she continued, "already shows a pattern. This incident doesn't stand alone. It confirms." A lawyer cleared his throat. "We'd like to review your findings before. You will receive them when the agency releases them." she said. Not before. The room shifted again. Control had changed hands, and everyone felt it. Hours later, as dawn crept into the terminal through high windows, the meeting ended. Documents were signed acknowledging receipt of instructions. Devices were surrendered for forensic imaging. Timelines were set that could not be moved. She stood, slung her bag over her shoulder, and stepped back into the terminal. Morning travelers poured in now, fresh coffee, rolling suitcases, oblivious optimism. The world kept moving. That was the point. Her phone buzzed once. A secure message confirmed what she already knew. The audit would expand. The findings would be public. The consequences would not be quiet. At baggage claim, she waited like everyone else. The carousel whined to life. A child laughed. A man argued with an airline rep about a missing bag. Life resumed its rhythm, unaware of the fault line that had just shifted beneath it. She retrieved her bag and walked toward the exit. Outside, sunlight spilled across the curb, crisp and honest. She breathed it in, the night finally behind her. A driver held a sign with a number, not a name. She nodded and followed him to the car. As they pulled away, her phone buzzed again. A headline draft crossed her screen, carefully worded, intentionally vague, but unmistakable. An airline under federal review. A compliance failure. An investigation underway. She closed the message. Later that week, statements would be issued. Training programs announced. Executives would speak earnestly about values and learning moments. Some faces would disappear from leadership pages. Others would resign to spend more time with family. Settlements would be negotiated. Policies rewritten. But something else would change, too. A gate agent somewhere would pause before making a quick decision. A supervisor would think twice before using the word cooperate. A crew member would remember that a passenger's silence didn't mean consent, and that dignity was not a perk reserved for premium cabins. On another flight, weeks later, a woman would board with a first-class ticket and take her seat without question. No one would think it remarkable. That, she believed, would be the quiet victory. As the car merged onto the highway, the city unfolding ahead, she allowed herself a small, private smile. Not of triumph, but of closure. Power didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waited, listened, documented, and then insisted the truth stand where it belonged. She looked out the window as the airport faded behind her. Justice, she knew, didn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it boarded early, took careful notes, and landed exactly on time.